Welcome aboard, everybody. Michael Cohen here with you on the Sports Talk Nation. We have got a lot to discuss today, The New York Mets set fire to the hot stove season with a 36-hour marathon of signings and moves that just has everyone's heads spinning right now. In an offseason that started so horribly for the Mets this year, where they lost Pete Alonso, lost Edwin Diaz, said goodbye to Brandon Nimmo, said goodbye to Jeff McNeil, the Mets over the last couple of days have turned around their offseason and made it very, very interesting, and once again are going to go into a season and into spring training with a lot of compelling stories. Now, I will say this. Before I get into breaking down all the player moves, it is amazing to me. Not only have we seen the Mets make a flurry of moves, we've also seen Met fans go to war against one another, as social media has exploded with Met fans criticizing one another for either liking moves or disliking moves. It has gone completely insane. We'll get into more of that when I get into especially the move for Luis Robert. But first of all, let's start here. The move that really changes the complexion of this offseason is the move to get Freddy Peralta. That's the biggest linchpin of this whole thing. For the Mets to go out there and get themselves a bona fide ace, a starting pitcher at the top of this rotation that they desperately needed, that was the move that David Stearns and Steve Cohen had to make from really the jump of this offseason. And after a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, would it be Framber Valdez? Would they kick the tires on a Tariq Skubal? Would they kick the tires on a Freddy Peralta with the Milwaukee Brewers? The Mets finally get the deal done with the Brewers for Freddy Peralta, and not only that, but they also get Tobias Myers in the deal as well. And all the Mets had to give up were two of their top five prospects. Now, it's costly because it is two of the top five prospects in Brandon Sprout and Jet Williams. Yes, but the fact is this. I understand there are going to be some Met fans that are going to be upset that the Mets gave up that amount for a pending free agent Freddy Peralta, but the fact is this, you got to give up something to get something, and the Mets got themselves a 17-game winner, a pitcher who right now is still in the prime of his career, had one of the best seasons in the league last year, 2.90 ERA, struck out 200-plus batters each of the last three seasons. You had to make that move. If you're going to go out there and get one of the top pitchers in the game and compete against teams like the Phillies and the Dodgers in the National League, you got to go out there and you got to make that kind of move. So, it's the changing of the guard, if you will, of where this offseason was. It changes the complexion totally. Without Freddy Peralta, it's a mixed bag offseason. With Freddy Peralta now in the fold, it feels a little bit better than it did 24 hours ago. 36 hours ago, a week ago. And really, when you take a look at this Met spending spree over the last several days where they've gotten Freddy Peralta, signed Bo Bichette, traded for Luis Robert, who I think is a kind of a polarizing trade in that regard, made these kind of moves to get a Luis Garcia on a one-year deal, had Tobias Myers as kind of a throw-in a lot of ways in the Peralta deal. All of this kind of really kick-started a week ago when the Mets got outbid by the Dodgers for Kyle Tucker. And I don't know if that just set a fire under the rear end of David Stearns, if it pissed off Steve Cohen, whatever it was. All of a sudden, the Mets, who were having a very conservative winter so far, where it felt like they were tearing it down, just said, let's go get it. And that's exactly what has happened here over the last couple of days. Now, whether all these moves work out or not, we'll have to wait and see. But this Mets team in 2026 is going to feel a heck of a lot different just in personnel from what it was last year. I can't guarantee that means they're going to be better. I can't sit here and tell you that they're going to be a better team and they're going to be a playoff team. They may not be. But the fact is this, it is going to be a totally different ball club than we saw just last season, especially the end of last season. As I said, Freddy Peralta is the linchpin that makes this offseason and all the moves that have led up for this week come together. That's the biggest move of all. The other move that you really have to like, of course, is Bo Bichette. Now, the Mets have been experimenting a lot this year, right? They signed Jorge Polanco, who has never played first base before, and they're going to make him, he's a second baseman, natural second baseman and a shortstop, and they're going to put him at first base. Concerns me, but that was one of the moves they made this offseason. They then, of course, remember, very early in this offseason, traded Brandon Nimmo for Marcus Semien. Good defensive second baseman, but he's getting up there in age and doesn't hit that well as he did early in his career. He's now at second base. So you have these two concerns there on the right side of the infield. What are you doing at third base? Is it going to be Brett Beatty? Is it going to be Mark Vientos? The Mets go out there and they get Bo Bichette, who throughout his career in Toronto has been a very good, young, consistent hitter. This is a guy who is a .294 lifetime hitter. He hit .311 last year before getting hurt in September, and then came back in the World Series for the Blue Jays. And before 2024 was giving Toronto 159 games a season. 2021, 2022, and 23 played virtually every single day and would hit between 20 to 30 home runs a year, and at times his best season drove in 102 runs back in 2021. Still 27 years old, really entering the prime of his career, and you get him. What's the funniest part of all this is the fact that the Mets pry him away for the Phillies, because it looked like the Phillies were going to sign him to a deal, but the Mets came after Bichette with a short-term but very high AAV contract of $42 million a year. Crazy money, I get it. 3 years, $126 million with opt-outs, but Bichette takes that. He's going to take that kind of contract and gamble on himself, make a ton of money at third base, $42 million a year. Makes you wonder why they couldn't get Pete Alonso to sign a contract of, $30 or more million a year, but that's beside the point. They pry him away from the Phillies, which is huge, and he is going to be Mets third baseman. So that's a shrewd move. And then, of course, you add the moves of getting Luis Garcia, who has been around quite some time, a middle reliever who can give you some innings, middle to late parts of games. The Mets need that kind of reliever. He is 38, but he is a high leverage reliever. I've read somewhere he tops around 97 miles an hour on his fastball. He's been around for a long time, been with 8 different teams. Could be a very nice piece. And as I mentioned briefly, Tobias Myers with the Brewers as well. Also a piece you get in there who can be both a reliever and a starter. So those moves over the last couple of days, okay, Bichette, Peralta, Garcia, and Myers, you can't argue against any of those moves. Those are all solid moves that can help help the Mets here in 2026 and moving forward. Obviously, you want to bring up concerns about the contract with Peralta, as I just mentioned. He's on a 1-year deal, basically. He has a club option for 2027. He's making $8 million this year, which is kind of cheap considering the kind of pitcher he is. Be fascinating to see what the Mets do as far as negotiating with him for a long-term contract, which they have to, imagine, would have to consider doing, especially considering the players they give up, giving up Jet Williams and Brandon Sprout, 2 of the top prospects. I would imagine Mets, who don't usually like to give out big contracts, especially to pitchers, will have to consider that, I would imagine, with Peralta here at some point, whether it's now, later in the season, or next offseason. That's the story that we're going to have to pay attention to over time. Now this is where it gets interesting. Because the Mets, in addition to all these other moves, also traded for Luis Robert from the Chicago White Sox. This, to me, has been the most polarizing move of all. Because with Robert, the talent is there. This is a player who was a Gold Glove winner. He is a very good defensive center fielder, has good range in the outfield. The problem with Robert is this. As a hitter, he is madly inconsistent. In fact, he has been quite poor, very poor, over the last couple of years. And in addition, he has an injury history dating back to the start of his Major League career in 2021. And yes, he carries with him a $20 million price tag for this season. Now, I know there are a lot, and now this trade has started, in my mind, basically a civil war between Met fans on social media. You have one side of the aisle of Met fans who are all in on David Stearns. Every move David Stearns makes is absolute gold, and they love this move no matter what. Then you have the other side of the Met fans who are skeptical. They look at the numbers, they look at the stats, and they say, I'm not impressed. What gives with this? So both of these sides now have gone to head to head and are beating up on each other on social media. Fact is this, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of talent there with Luis Robert, but there's also concern. You have to be honest when you take a look at these guys, these players, guys, and like I said, not every move has to have unbridled, blind enthusiasm and praise all the time. As I mentioned, the Peralta deal, love the move, fantastic. You need a starting pitcher, but yes, he is a free agent. Wait and see what happens with that. That's just being honest. That's all I'm saying. I love the move. He is a free agent. The Luis Robert move, it scares me. Like I said, I see the talent. I know it's there. But when I take a look at the numbers and I see a hitter who hit 223 last year, hit 224 the year before that, on-base percentage each of those 2 years, 278 and 279 respectively. He has a career 259, 313, 455 slash, and an OPS each of the last 2 years in the 600s. I have to be worried. I really have to be worried. Not to mention, as I said, an injury history that has plagued him throughout his career. And you have to sit there and say, okay, what is the plan if he gets hurt? Who's going to be in center field? Is it going to be Carson Bang, who may end up being the starting left fielder for this team? If the Mets feel he is ready to jump to the major leagues this year, do they have to go back to Tyrod Taylor? Do they have to go back to somebody else? Are they going to bring back Starling Marte, who is still a free agent? What are the Mets going to do if, let's say, if Luis Robert gets hurt? What's the alternative plan? So it's not necessarily a criticism of, why did you get this guy? This guy's horrible. There's concerns here. I think he's good. I think he's talented. But these issues that have propped up for him in his career are something that are, for me anyway, red flags. And I understand you can sit there and we can go through all the splits and we can break it all down with Luis Robert, whether it be you go month by month. I know people talk about the second half and the first half. Let's just look at this right now. First half of the year. April, Robert hit 161 last year. May, he hit 195 last May. Last June, he hit 194. Not good for 3 months. Then in July, he got hot. Maybe he finally got healthy. Maybe he was starting to feel good at the plate again. Hit 353, 3 homers, 11 RBIs. Hit well, very well. But then in August, things got cut short, got hurt again, ended up hitting 256 in the month of August, didn't play in September. Very uneven year. The year before that, 2024, okay, if you want to play all these kind of games of splits and metrics and all this other stuff, 24, very inconsistent again. Okay, I'm going to read you the batting averages from April all the way to September. 125, 202, 244, 218 in August, 235 in September. So he has been madly inconsistent over the last couple of seasons. His best season in 2023, he was great. Fantastic. Okay? Again, a lot of people want to mention his stats against left-handers. 2023, very good. Hit 312 against left-handers. Hit 252 even against right-handers that year when he was healthy for really the majority of an entire season. And again, in June of that year, he hit 293. In May of that year, he hit 310. In fact, in June of that year, in 2023, he had 11 home runs. So there is potential there. And when you continue to take a look at the numbers for Luis Robert, when you look at it and you look at his comparison, who he compares to most likely is Cedric Mullins. That's not a knock. It's what it is. Just take a look at the numbers right there. Look at the WAR. Both of them at 5.8. Both of them are very similar power numbers. Very similar very similar on base numbers, very similar batting average numbers. So, yes, it is a concern. The talent is there, but I have to be concerned by it. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a low risk, high reward, and all this stuff. Risk is risk. I don't care if it's low risk, high risk. Risk is risk. It's a risk because the last couple of years have been great with him. If he is able to stay healthy, if he is able to show that he can get back on track and stay healthy for consistent amount of time, yes, maybe. Again, it's a lot of ifs with Luis Robert. Maybe he can give the Mets something, but as I said, it's a lot of ifs. It's the one move that the Mets have made that kind of left me over the last several days kind of scratching my head. It's not a negative. I'm not saying not blasting it. I'm saying I hate it. I'm just saying I have concerns. That's all I'm saying. So overall, when I look at these moves that the Mets have made here over the last couple of days, they have positioned themselves to be incredibly interesting this year. Like I said, it's a new team. It's a totally new team. The team that we have gotten used to for many years with guys like Alonso and Nimmo and Diaz, and even the guys that have been here and will be back here, Lindor and Soto, that team and those teams are gone. This is a new team now. Totally new. Brand new. And we'll see how they do. Last year's team, as talented and as popular as they were, from June on, we all know, one of the worst records in baseball from the last 3 months of the year as they collapsed and missed the playoffs. What will this team do? Well, if you ask me right now, we'll see, obviously. I'm not going to, as I say, run and print out playoff tickets right now. But the things that I like the most about this team going in is the fact that you now have a starting rotation that looks better than it did last year. That's the biggest improvement of all. The fact that you have Freddy Peralta at the top of this rotation, followed by Noah McLean, who was so good at the second half of last year. You now have a 1 and 2 in this rotation that the Mets did not have a year ago. That's number one. And then whether you figure it out with Sean Manaea and Cody Bellinger, if they can get back to being who they were 2 years ago, then you have a really good 1 through 4 in that regard. And we'll see what happens with Jonah Tong and where, Tobias Myers, if he's going to be a starter, a reliever. The rotation's better. I think the bullpen, a little more interesting. I'm concerned about Devin Williams as the closer. I think the Mets are going to miss Edwin Diaz. Devin Williams obviously did not pitch well for the Yankees last year. The Mets are taking that gamble, hoping that he can do what Edwin Diaz did in 2022, where he just turned the switch on. The Mets are hoping that Devin Williams does that for them in 2026. We shall see. Obviously, the mixing and matching of guys at a position, I don't mind Bo Bichette, who was a shortstop, moving to third. I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, he's never played third. We've seen guys go from short to third a lot. Alex Rodriguez went from short to third. He did fine. Edgardo Alfonso was a guy who was a shortstop, played third base, and then played second base. He played all over the infield for the Mets in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. He did fine. So I'm not concerned about that. The Polanco thing kind of scares me because he's never played first base. He played a little bit of it, I guess. We'll see. The Mets don't really have a first baseman this year. It feels like it's going to be a platoon of Polanco and Vientos, maybe Brett Beatty if he doesn't get traded. That's kind of what it feels like right now at first. We'll wait and see what happens there. The fact that the Mets lost, look, the Mets are going to miss Pete Alonso, okay? Let's just call it what it is. You can sit here and say, hey, that team didn't win anything, those players didn't win anything. Okay, fine. They didn't win a World Series, but the player and the contributor that is a Pete Alonso and a Edwin Diaz, those two pieces, they're going to be missed. And the impact, the fact they're not here, it's going to be felt. I don't care what you say. And that's up to these other guys here that they have put together to see what they're going to become and what kind of team they're going to become here in 2026. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Mets are going to be this year. And you know what? The fact is, they're not done adding pieces. They're not done. They may end up adding another starter. They may end up getting a first baseman, whether between now and the trade deadline in July. We'll have to wait and see how this thing plays out. But for right now, I would say that this offseason went from full panic mode to, for some fans, total ecstasy. I'm going to be somewhere in the middle. I'm going to say that this is going from a definitely a D minus F to, I would say, a solid B to B plus. Is that fair? A B to B plus? Can we agree that's fair enough? I think so. So, a excellent week, a huge week for the New York Mets, and in a way, both Steve Cohen and David Stearns, they absolutely earned it this week, and especially Stearns, he earned it, especially with that Peralta do. Fantastic. Yankees, they've been quiet all offseason, right? Well, they finally got their guy. Cody Bellinger is back. 5 years, $162 million. No-brainer. They had to bring him back this year, guys. I mean, I know Bellinger was flirting with the Mets a little bit as well, and there was talk the Mets could go out and sign Bellinger. This is before the Luis Robert deal went down. I certainly would have preferred, let's say, Bellinger over Robert as far as the Mets are concerned, but he's a better fit for Yankee Stadium. He's a better fit for the Yankees, and it makes sense for him to go back there. He had a great year last year with them. 5 years, $162 million. I think he can opt out after years 2 and 3 of that deal, and it makes sense. You now have a 2 through 4, middle of the order of Judge, Bellinger, and Stanton moving forward for the next couple of years. The one thing that's a problem for the Yankees is they look a lot like the same team we saw at the end of last season that got their butts kicked by the Toronto Blue Jays. They look like the same team. So that would be a bit of a concern if I were a Yankee fan going into the 2026 season and going to spring training. And I think they could use some more pitching. They haven't really done anything with that. So they made the one move they had to make. It took them all season at something, but you can, if you're a Yankee fan, you could be somewhat pessimistic, if not concerned, going forward regardless. So that's where we stand, folks. And to all these Met fans in this Civil War, put an end to it. Try to be fair. Accept the fact that not every move is going to get a whole lot of praise. Not every move should get a lot of criticism or praise either way. Try to find a way into the middle. That's my thing to all the Met fans that are going absolutely crazy against one another this week. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time.